Everybody, welcome to Dwell Church. My name is Matt Stefan. I'm part of the leadership team here. Grateful beyond grateful that you are spending this time with us. Does everybody get a chance to smell something good on the way in? Or maybe you got a little, I forgot my twig. Got to get it. Got to sniff it. Grateful that you're here today. We don't always smell jasmine at Dwell Church, but today we are. Grateful that we're going to do it together. Dwell Church is a 2.25-year-old church plant. We're founded on 5 core principles that we want to be Jesus-centered, research-based, trauma-informed, diverse, affirming, and inclusive, and we are exploring together what that looks like. But the headline is this: we're on a quest to build a church where any person could take a step closer to Jesus. So even if this is the only time that you ever set foot in a Dwell Church event, I hope that just for a moment you feel an invitation to walk more closely with Jesus. If you are new, we would love for you to connect with us so that we can connect with you. We'd love to hear your story. You can connect with us by tapping on the thing that looks like that. We don't know what to call it yet. So if you are a clever person with a marketing degree, tell us what to call that thing because we can't figure it out. Couple of updates for you. Last week we had a story night here in this room. It's so lovely. It was great. We're mentioning it for 2 or 3 reasons. One, once again, to thank the storytellers. It was just a lovely time spent together. 2, to put on everyone's radar, story night is so sacred and important. Cancel everything on your calendar if it conflicts next time. Because here's the headline for this one. From now on, we're no longer going to be putting them onto the internet. That's for a couple of reasons. One, if you've been, you know how powerful it can be. We want to honor what's going on in the room. And 2, we always gave the storytellers the option to say, please don't put this on the internet. But increasingly, that has become the preference. So from now on, this is an in-person event only, and I think it's the only, maybe not the only, it's one of the few in-person only events that Dwell Church has. But they're so much fun. We will probably take a break from those in the summer. We'll pick it up in the fall. We tend to do them quarterly, and we'll get it out in advance enough for you to cancel your family reunion and make sure you make it to story night. All right, yesterday we were at the Pride Parade. It was so flippin' fun. Yes. It was delightful. Every time we do these events, at least one person comes and says, where was this church when I was growing up? One of the things we have tried to do at Dwell Church is just plant the church that we want to attend, to gather people that we adore and build a church that they would want to come to. And this is one of those moments where it's like, oh, God put us on this earth for a specific reason. To invite people into Jesus' presence, to tell the world how much he does truly love them and how proud of them he is. It was so much fun. It was beautiful. Then after this, the Stefan family hosted a birthday party for an 11-year-old member of my family at this same said county fair. We were there till 9:30 p.m. Of the 10 4th and 5th graders, only 1 threw up. So it was a huge success. So our family, we are so tired, so I don't stand by anything I say after this moment, especially in this sermon that's coming up. But man, the Pride Parade was incredible. Thanks to everybody who made that possible. So last year there was a parade and then a festival afterwards. This year, for whatever reason, they have split up those 2 events. So this coming Saturday, there's still a Pride Festival in Central Park where Dwell Church will have a booth. If you want to greet people, tell people about Dwell Church there, we're still looking for a few volunteers. And if you're just looking for something to do, you can go to the Pride Festival, stop by the booth. It'll be fun for a couple hours. That's coming up on Saturday, I think. Oh, yes, this one. Okay, we've been working really hard as a church body to raise funds to create a full-time, ongoing, next-gen director role to oversee our kids and students ministry. And we are coming in hot on a bunch of interview processes with a bunch of great candidates. So we'll have some more updates soon, but just want to let you know it's going great, everybody. We're making progress. Be praying for this person, for this process, for those amazing kids out there who sometimes we hear screaming and yelling. I'm just really grateful that we discerned together that we wanted to make this big financial investment into the next generation. So it's working. Thank you for everybody who has been a part of that so far. Excited to keep giving those updates through the month of June. All right, we got more Pride pictures because you can never get enough. But what else do we have here? Okay, we've been in a series called Taste and See, Loving God with All Five of Your Senses, where we are trying to recover a deep, valuable sense of how much our body matters to God. One of the things I do with the last 8% of my brain is work on a PhD at the London School of Theology, where my dissertation is in theological anthropology. What does it mean to be a human being from the perspective of the Christian tradition? And one of the things I will be arguing that I want to impress upon you today and in this series is that your unique human particularities, your physical body, your story are gifts to you from God. That is not primarily how we are trained to experience our bodies. But from the perspective of Jesus, our Creator, each particularity, each bit of our story is handcrafted by Him as a gift to you and to me. So we're working on recovering that sense of how deeply involved Jesus is in the actual fabric of our stories and our bodily constitution. And as I've thought about how we've tried to, how do you get into that idea that your human body is a gift to you from God? How do you begin thinking about that? Well, we said maybe an entry point are the five senses. And as I've thought about the five senses, the more I have thought about how inclusive our senses are. Because the human body has a wild way. If one sense fails you, the other four pick up where they left off, right? That there is a way in which learning to experience God with all of our senses lets us always be included in the work of God, because as long as we are alive, at least one of those is probably going to be working. Even when our memories are not, even the rest of our body is not, there is some way through our five senses that we will be able to make contact with what Jesus is up to. This is a profoundly inclusive idea that we are experiencing God with all five senses. Here's what we're going to do today. I'm going to recap, because the last time we talked about this was like a month ago, so I barely remember. I'm doing my best here. We're going to talk about smell in the Bible. It turns out there's an entire field of research on the theology of the human olfactory senses in the Bible. I'm going to mention very little of it, but it's going to be great. It's going to be great. We're going to work on our breathing. Part of what we want to do is inhale some of the good-smelling jasmine that is in this room. And then finally, we're going to talk about becoming people who smell good to God. When I first wrote this sermon, I told Lisa when I walked in today, I'm going to pull out like 11 slides of these. One of them was called Introduction to Smell, where I talked about how we're designed to smell bad smells better than good smells. That's a true thing. But I'm going to spare you the part where I talk about bad smells, and I'm going to assume that you know about bad smells. Great. Here we go. Here are some of the learning aims for this series. Overall, we want to start healing our relationship to our own body. As I said about human particularity, your body is a gift. We want to learn why we mistrust our bodies. Go back and see some of that in the first sermon. And then we want to begin to experience how Jesus is with us in our bodies as we feel the bodily sensation of being human. We're going to talk some more about that today. And we're using the five senses as a baby step to do so. One of the things we talked about last week was experiencing trauma in our bodies. There's a field of research called epigenetics, which tracks the way that historical, intergenerational, cross-generational trauma is encoded into our DNA in such a way that things that never happened to you are burned into your own genetic code. You carry that stuff with you, and you can go back and listen to that. There's some great studies, very interesting stuff. But the practical upshot is this: if the trauma is in our bodies, then the healing is in our bodies. And someone at Dwell Church prayed last year that we would learn to trust Jesus with our nervous system. Not just with our minds, but deep in our body. So part of what we are approaching here is if the nervous system damage is done bodily through this kind of epigenetic trauma, then the healing also occurs as we learn to feel what is going on in our body prayerfully. That's what we're working on here. All right, said that one. Okay, here is one of the most painful lessons that I have had in my own mental health journey, that understanding it is important, but it won't fix it. Feeling it will. That's what your body is for. You're not just a brain on a stick, but your journey towards healing and wholeness is going to happen as you learn to feel. We'll talk about people who are learning to feel the pain or the sensation or the anxiety in their actual body, to be aware of the bodily sensation of those things. And therein lies the journey towards wholeness that Jesus is leading us on. Not just understanding my own patterns, not just understanding the moments that I react, those too, but also feeling some of those things in my body as though they happen. And it turns out that we have been trained to try to eliminate that as much as possible because it's scary. You can't control it. So what do we need to be able to recover our ability to feel? That's part of what we have talked about here. Last week I was talking about this incredible moment between Pema Chödrön and Ezra Klein, and I want to read it for you again because it's a load-bearing concept here of what do we really need to recover our capacity to feel what is going on in our body. Pema Chödrön is an 89-year-old American-born Buddhist monk, and Ezra Klein is a podcast host on a spiritual journey, my friends. So I'm going to read to you a bit of their conversation. Ezra Klein, one of the things that I have started saying to myself is that I should try to get my nervous system used to certain things, like feeling uncomfortable, feeling anxious. That's what he means. And what those sensations trigger in me is something physical in my body, it turns out. If you can connect with that, actually working with a lot of people doesn't feel very hard to connect with that, because when you ask them, where are you feeling this? They could mostly tell you if you ask them, right? People can go right there. And when you ask what does it feel like, people usually say there's some version of it contracted and tight. He says to Pema Chödrön, one word that you use sometimes that really helps me is abiding. We're abiding inside of our body. We're abiding inside of these sensations. We were talking about this before we began, how I sometimes have trouble with the verbs here. Is it surrendering? Is it letting go? Is it embracing? Is it accepting? Which is it? But for me, discomfort, uncertainty, and insecurity, it took me time to see this, but they're very physical sensations, actually. They're a contraction for me in my solar plexus. It took me a long time to see how reflexively I ran from that, and I was just trying to make the feeling go away. Now, Pema Chödrön. Yes, if you go into your body and you find in your body where the pain is, where you're holding that grievance or need for revenge or regret or that moment that you didn't say the right thing, you will be able to find the physical location of those feelings. You don't really have to name what the feeling is, but you can feel where it is. I just ask, what are you feeling and where are you feeling it right now? Not conceptually, you don't have to say mad or happy or sad, but the ask is, what are you feeling? And then just find that feeling in your body, even if it's a story. Where do you carry that story? What is the location of that story in your body? And what you'll find is a contraction, a tightness, a knot almost, and then you can ask the person, well, where is it located for you? Now, some people will say, the pain is all over my body. But what they'll usually say is, it's here, it's in my throat or my stomach. The location doesn't always matter, but it is a way of learning to feel that. And once you're there, the attitude towards it is not that it is something that needs to be eradicated or changed. Let's find it and then we can throw it out. This is the Buddhist monk speaking. You don't need to find it and throw it out or something like that. The attitude is more that you find where the pain is in your body, and I like to use the word tenderness towards it. You send tenderness, you send warmth towards it. People do this differently and find their own way towards this. If you want to conceptualize it, I would say that you find the location in your body and you send towards it unconditional love. You send unconditional warmth and tenderness towards it. It's like you're not going to give up on yourself. Ezra Klein, what if you don't feel unconditional love towards that feeling? Oh, if you don't feel unconditional love towards it, says Pema Chödrön, that's not a problem. Then you just send warmth towards the sensation of what does it feel like to not feel unconditional love for yourself? So what would you say that it feels like to feel that way, Ezra Klein? What does it feel like to not have unconditional love towards myself? Pema Chödrön. Yes, to feel like you don't qualify for it because you can't find the right thing to do to earn the unconditional love. What does that feel like? Ezra Klein. Let me try to think through how it feels for me. In the podcast, there's a long silence. And then he says, I think the idea of how it would feel to have unconditional love for a feeling like that is so alien that even trying to describe it is hard. The water I swim in is wanting certain feelings to go away. what we're going to wrestle down in this series is that everywhere we look in mental health, human flourishing, relationship to our body, is the need for a source of unconditional love. And that's simply the spiritual practice that Jesus is teaching us, how to connect to the source of unconditional love. And to put all these things together, how I experience it is when I am working very hard to not feel a feeling, I remind myself that Jesus loves that part of me and that he is with me as I learn to feel that feeling. That has been transformative in my own mental health journey. And today we're going to connect that to the sense of smell. In the book, The Body Keeps the Score, they make very clear to us that as a culture, we are trained to cut ourselves off from these feelings. There is a clear problem here that we are attempting to solve. Now, a close reading of the Bible shows us that the human body is a gift. One of the most paradigmatic passages about the human body, John chapter 1, verse 14. The Word became human flesh and walked among us. It tells us that the secret of the divine plan was that the human body was always made to be a receptacle, a container for God's presence. That's what your body is made for in all of its wondrous particularity. A couple of thoughts on this. African-American scholar Brian Bantam says this: the incarnation is a testament to the truth that our bodies matter. Your body matters. Richard Rohr, from the Center of Action, Contemplation and Action. Love this guy. Jesus' birth was God saying that it is good to be a human with your body and its limited and particular nature. That's what we're working on. Okay, God and your sense of smell. Turns out that there are all kinds of images in the Bible of God having a nose, of God smelling things. It is said often that God has a large nose. This is a very important Hebrew belief. It means that he is patient. The Hebrews understood that when you were getting angry, your nose would change colors and flare. And so they knew that if your nose was long, it took a long time for the redness of your anger to reach the end, at which point they thought you would explode. That's when the anger would erupt. God has a long nose is a way of saying that he is patient. And throughout the Bible, God is smelling things always. He has all kinds of stories about God smelling things. We're going to unpack them together as we go. Now, one of the things we have to understand in the background is this idea that our culture is broadly platforming the idea that to be successful, you have to change your body in some way. And tomorrow on our podcast, I'll give you a couple really juicy examples that I omitted for time from this sermon. But it occurred to me as I was deleting those slides that this is a self-evident concept. That if you're sitting in this room, that if you are a human being, you have already wrestled with the reality that there is a demand, almost on an unconscious level, to change your body in some way, to fit in or succeed, to do better, to optimize. We feel this everywhere we go. And maybe that you have grown up and become wiser in a way that you can ignore it, but that on some level, I am sure, you have felt this. So I'll save you the time and not enumerate a bunch of juicy examples. We must recover a sense that our bodies are this gift. It is this gift. So here are a couple ideas about our smell and becoming someone who smells good to God. Here are three really good examples. The first, I've got to tell this story. It's too good. It sets up, I think, the Bible passages. When I was a kid, I went to a really weird church, and one of the things that made it weird was that we were partly a hub for this giant international network of missionaries. And so people would come stay at my house. They would come join our church for 3 months. It would be really intense, and then they would leave forever. They would go back to the mission field. And we were always kind of this revolving door of really intense interactions. And sometimes the conversations would be really instructive. And as somebody who grew up in a middle state that I really love, this was actually the place where I learned the most about the world. I really treasured this part of my experience. I was talking to people from all over the world, from right there in Lee Summit, Missouri. One of my friends that I made through this process was an African guy, and I like to ask everybody this same question when they would come in from like an international situation. I would say, what is it about the United States that surprises you the most? And this one friend that I made, this African guy, said, the smells here in the United States are shocking to me. And I said, well, what do you mean? And he was like, well, nothing here smells good. It either smells bad, or it smells like nothing, or it smells like chemicals. The things that Americans primarily smell like are chemicals. And this was shocking to me because I had never thought of that before. And I tried to name a good smell that wasn't baking bread and wasn't chemicals. Those are the two things I could think of. That every candle and spray and deodorant and cologne, the only things I could list or make access to in my own home fit those categories. It was either bread my mom would make or it was a chemical-based good smell. And part of what we want to reflect on together is how we have sort of created a world of human optimization where those are the options. It's either bad or it's fake. We have really lost contact with something that is natural and pleasant and beautiful and available. We have lost touch with one of these primary ways of communicating with God, good smells. So, in a minute, we're going to sniff this. I'm delighted. That smells great. All right. Here are the Bible verses that I've been promising you. The first is, okay. We're just getting to it. All right, Leviticus 1:9, you might have anticipated this, but in the temple cult where they were doing animal sacrifice, those passages almost always end. There was an aroma that was pleasing to the Lord. This is like a category of smells. Now, we have to understand a whole bunch of things about this for us to digest it as modern people. But let's read this one right here. You are to wash the internal organs and legs of this animal with water, and the priest is to burn all of it on the altar. It is a burnt offering, a food offering, an aroma pleasing to God. One of the things Lisa and I have in common is we come from states that prize barbecue. And if you come from a barbecue place in the world, it's a little bit easier to understand what is going on here. They're hosting a barbecue. And that's only a slight exaggeration because in the instructions, it is always the next part of the instruction is who gets what portion. This is a giant feast of a meal. And so as moderns who might be disgusted by some of the particularities of this, the picture we should have in our mind is a communal feast, crucially important. Now, what does the phrase, an aroma pleasing to the Lord, mean? Let's unpack some of these idiosyncratic phrases in the Old Testament. An aroma pleasing to the Lord means two things. God has accepted what you have given him, and a relational repair has happened. And so in the Bible, the primary thing good smell is associated with is that God has accepted you, and the relation between the two of you has been repaired. Now, the Hebrews had this great idea that the best way to embody that is through a communal feast, where we are together in joyful and full ways, that we've been accepted by God in a way that we have to share and be satisfied in. But smell is designed to communicate to us that God has accepted us and that our relationship is repaired. In the New Testament, they take this in two different directions. The first is to say that the church itself is God's way of spreading this good smell around. So in 2 Corinthians, which was the tagline verse of my weird church growing up, 2 Corinthians 2:14, thanks be to God who always leads us as captives in Christ's triumphal procession and uses us to spread the aroma of knowledge of him everywhere. This is the same word. It is drawing from that concept. Our job is to spread around the sensation of God accepting you and having his relationship with you repaired. This is the good smell that we are bringing into the world. Now, in the book of Revelation, there is a different direction, but it is drawn from this other Old Testament passage that our prayers are good smelling to God. And so David wrote this, I call to you, Lord, please come quickly to me. Psalm 141, verses 1 and 2. Hear me when I call. May my prayer be set before you like incense. May the lifting of my hands be like the evening sacrifice. Will you hear me? Will you accept me? Will you repair my relationship? Will you rescue me in my situation? It is a prayer that smells good to God. And in the strange and beautiful book of Revelation, in chapter 5, it takes up this image of our prayers being incense to God. This is a complex passage, and we're going to walk through it bit by bit, but there's a Trinitarian image being captured here. That somehow Jesus is the lamb that was slain and God is here present, and they are working together to seal what is the fate of the universe. We'll work through it together, and then you'll see what your good-smelling prayers has to do with the end of the world. John of Patmos said, then I saw the lamb looking as if it had been slain, standing at the center of the throne, encircled by the four living creatures and the elders. The four living creatures represent all of creation, and the elders represent all of the wisdom of creation. And the lamb had 7 horns. The 7 is the number of perfection. So the lamb is slain and on the throne that is in the center of the universe. And the 7 horns are the all-powerful nature of Jesus, even though he is humble and wounded. And the 7 eyes mean that Jesus is all-knowing. And they are the 7 spirits of God, here the Trinitarian part, the Holy Spirit of Jesus sent out into all of the earth that is all-powerful and all-seeing, his Holy Spirit, radiating from the throne at the center of all things. And then he, God, went and took the scroll from the right hand of him who sat on the throne. And when he had taken it, the 4 living creatures and 24 elders, all of creation and all of its wisdom, fell down and worshipped the Lamb that was slain. And each of the living creatures and each of the elders had a harp, and they were holding golden bowls full of incense, which are the prayers of God's people. So if we draw up all the imagery about the smells in the Bible, smells represent that God has accepted us and that our relationship with him has been repaired. And that at the heart of all things, the prayers that reflect that relationship come into the throne room of God. That this is what God is smelling all day long. This is what his office smells like, is the joy of knowing you in a repaired relationship. And when we think about the nature of the Psalms and saying our prayers go up to you as incense does, the Psalms give us permission to talk to God, not just in happy moments or in worshipful moments, but in every moment, in every bodily sensation that we experience, in every anxiety and regret and disappointment. Those also are the prayers that enter into this golden bowl that is the center of all things. That God cherishes knowing you in this honest way. That is what smells good to God. A deeply honest conversation with him. And at this image that is sort of the like plot hinge of what happens to all of creation, all of those moments that you share with God, the pain, the heartache, the regret, the joy, all of it that you have offered to Jesus, that is in the final cut, the final battle, the moment where God heals all things and makes it whole. It is almost as if, including this image, that the golden bowls of incense full of the prayers of all people, it is almost as if God refuses to go forward with his plan for the universe without you. That here in this image, every one of those bodily sensations that you offer to him was somehow part of it. It is somehow part of it. Because you matter to God. Your story matters to him. Your body matters to him. So what we're going to do here for a moment is reflect on getting to have that completely honest conversation reflecting a repaired relationship with God. We're working on using our body, not just talking about it. So Lisa asked a friend that she knows from her program at school, graduate school, to lead us through a breath exercise. We're going to go through that breath exercise. And then we're going to sit here and sniff these babies as we have our traditional Sunday 2 minutes of silence. And we'll close that way. So we're going to lead. Kimberly, Lisa's friend, is going to lead us through a breath exercise. I put in our email this week that everybody was supposed to bring their nose. Did everyone do that? Okay, we're ready? All right, here we go.
Hello, Dwell Church. My name's Kimberly, and I'm a classmate of Lisa's. She's invited me to lead you guys through a breathwork practice. So I will lead you guys through what's called box breathing, and it's 4 counts of 4. They're slow counts, such as 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll go in through the nose to that slow count of 4, hold at the top to a count of 4, then release through the mouth at the count of 4 and hold at the bottom to the count of 4. So the box 4, 4, 4, 4. We'll do that twice. So I want to invite you to place one hand on your chest and take your thumb, put it on your belly button, and let those 4 fingers fall beneath. Connecting with your nervous system, with your body, we'll start our breath work. I would invite you to close your eyes. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, just choose an object in the room to focus your attention on. And I'll let you count your own breathing. I'll do it along with you. I'll count in my mind, you count in yours. And we'll start that now. Now, before we open our eyes, take a moment and pay attention to the sounds that you hear. And now bring your attention back to your breath. Is it shallow? Are you holding your breath? Do you notice a full breath? Be with yourself and your breathing for a moment. And now we'll take one more slow, deep breath together. And slowly release. And open our eyes. Thanks for doing that with me